and welcome to episode number 33 of the Girls to the Front podcast. It has been a really busy week, maybe 10 days since I last recorded the last episode. I had a week last week that was completely out of my normal routine, and I did lots of scary things, I think. So, I'm amped to say that I did the first Girls to the Front workshop, which was amazing. I got to talk about feeling empowered, being empowered, and things you can do around empowerment to about 90 12 to 14-year-old girls, which was amazing. Obviously, they're in small groups. 90 at a time would have been like really overwhelming. But I got to speak to 90 girls about feeling empowered and being empowered. So if even just one of them took something away from that, I'd be well and truly chuffed. But we spoke about like what empowerment means and how we all have different meanings, and how some days you just feel really good. And then we spoke about like feeling empowered with things like your period and how you can break down loads of stigma and you can change the narrative on stuff just by using your voice, and how much value your voice has, and just taking up space and all the stuff that I just constantly try and promote within Girls to the Front. Just being able to like deliver it in real time instead of like behind social media, being able to deliver it in real time and like seeing people's faces and girls' faces and having those conversations and being able to like work out definitions and being able to talk about, just how people define stuff and, how people have experienced the world, and like bringing that all together in one room and then seeing how that changes from group to group was just amazing. So I am so proud of myself. I talk about it all the time about how you should celebrate the little wins, you should celebrate the big wins, you should just say like that you're proud of yourself. And I'm gonna say that I am so proud of myself for creating something that has been not even just recognized by my friends, but recognized by like wider people as something that is useful for young people to know and experience. And the fact that like I would be considered someone that could lead in that space is huge, and just everything that I think I've been building towards with Girls to the Front. So it just really feels like the thing is manifesting itself, and I hope it's like the first of many. So I just got to keep riding this momentum now, and just keep just talking about it and saying that I can do these things, and I can create these resources, and I can create these opportunities to bring young girls together and talk about those things. And it was all around empowerment and how you can be empowered and feel empowered, and how you can create your definitions, and highlighting that actually we all have slightly different definitions and we all have slightly different connotations associated with what it means to be empowered. So actually we have to acknowledge that it is individual. And sometimes we have to reflect on what works for us might not work for other people, and being able to create spaces that are kind and compassionate and empathetic, so that we can have like, just a whole, thriving group of people and humans that feel like they can be the best version of themselves. But while I was doing the workshop, I had this like epiphany, and while I was creating what I was going to talk about in the workshop, I had this epiphany around empowerment. And like it all stemmed from me thinking about what empowerment was. And I think, I spent 30 years of my life thinking that the perfect scenario was going to be created where I would just feel empowered, and that other people around me were going to create spaces that facilitated that empowerment. And I would just one day wake up and just feel empowered with the group that I hung around with, or just feel empowered in general. And that was like a magic feeling that just one day would appear. And spending 30 years waiting for that to happen feels like now like I've just wasted time, when actually in reality you can empower yourself on so many levels, and you can create and curate these spaces that lead to you feeling empowered. So thinking about like what empowers you and what you value from like situations that do make you feel empowered, or at least build towards like making you feel like you have value, or making you feel like you've been listened and acknowledged, and then trying to like seek out how you can amplify that and how you can build that into your everyday life. So like I think a big thing for me in that feeling empowered was like starting to seek out groups of people that reflected my values and reflected how I viewed the world, and seeking those people out and then like spending lots of time around them. Like that was a huge step in me feeling empowered. And then also that realization that my voice has value, and that if I talk about things, and if I talk about my experiences, and if I talk about lessons I've learned, and if I talk about all this stuff, then I can help empower myself in terms of like acknowledge that all of these things have weight. And actually I can empower myself in terms of if I talk about stuff that might necessarily be like a bit of a stigmatized topic, or it might be something that, you know, isn't really widely discussed, then, you know, you can break down those barriers and you can feel empowered. Like a huge turning point for me was like this idea of talking about my period, and like using my voice to talk about my period. I'd had this kind of turning point when I was 28 where I was like, why am I using contraception when I'm putting all of the power? I am actively disempowering myself by giving all of these decisions over to GPs, to partners, to other people in my life, so that I had taken all the power out of my own hands and given it to someone else in terms of like my bodily autonomy. And hitting 28 and realizing that I had absolutely like very little say in what was happening to me and what I was doing, and then just deciding that I was going to take all of that back and fill my brain with all the knowledge around, you know, my health and my cycle and my well-being, and then just being like, no, I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to share this experience. And that was like hugely empowering for me, and like realizing that this was something that I had almost let happen to me, and then being able to like take that power back was huge. So trying to share that experience with young girls and trying to like amplify that I've learned something here, and I don't want you to wait until it's too late for you to then take the power back on certain things. So being able to like share that and be like, look, like if I can arm you with that knowledge now, and if I can talk about this in a way that you might not get right now, you might not get when you're 12, but maybe there might be a point when you turn 15 and you're like, oh my God, I listened to someone talk about this when I was 12 and now I get it. I'm armed with all this knowledge. You know, you are 15 years ahead of me, and I just hope that like stuff like that I can just keep sharing and keep talking about. And it always comes back to this idea about like being a lighthouse, and the more you just do and project out into the world and like share, talk, document, all this sort of stuff, you're like paving the way for someone that might be a few steps behind you, or might be just like looking for some affirmation or just some confirmation or some inspiration that they are doing the right thing and they're heading in the right direction, or they might need to like slightly change their path. But, you know, it was just that like evidence of like, you know, it felt at the time like just learning about my period was pretty much like a mundane little action that I had taken. And it was like, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, I was privileged enough and had the opportunity to go on a course and learn about it. But at the time, it felt like a really little insignificant action that maybe not was going to benefit loads of people. But it felt like, you know, it was a little thing that I was doing for myself. And then, yeah, this has now turned into like this hugely empowering thing for me, where now, I just want to keep sharing and talking about it, and getting other people to do the same. And, you know, I was trying to explain that this like light bulb moment happened for me when I was thinking about my period, but I think you can replace the word period with pretty much any topic in your life and it have the same effect. So on a similar level, this has happened to me with music recently, where I might not have necessarily been listening to like I've always loved music, and music has always been a huge part of my life. When I was 14, 15, I always had like my headphones in. I was always listening to something. And at the time it was like proper early noughties, like full emo music, like Taking Back Sunday, Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco. These people are all probably they are all problematic now. And then I found Metallica and like bands like that. And I was listening to that, and I loved that music, but I wasn't around people that had also loved that music on that level. So I wasn't necessarily seeking out like and going and taking a deep dive into like further and further and further into other bands that I think at the time, if I had found them at the time, would have been life-changing. And there are some bands that exist now that I'm like, this band has changed my life. Like Petrol Girls, for example, have 1,000% changed my life in a way that I cannot articulate. And I think I've said it on posts and I've said it a million times before. Like, if Petrol Girls did not write the song Big Mouth, I don't think Girls to the Front would exist. Like, in all honesty, I genuinely think if that song did not exist in the world, then Girls to the Front as it is now, me as a human would not exist in the way. It was like this huge, like someone might as well have punched me in the face. It was like so like, I don't know, like heart hitting, like I wanted to throw shit around. But yeah, like that didn't exist at the time. But if I'd been opened up to other music that was like that, but I just wasn't talking about it. I wasn't documenting it. I wasn't sharing it. I wasn't kind of curating spaces where I could have had those conversations. And when I have now, I feel like I have found stuff that makes me feel so empowered in terms of music. Like, I've mentioned Petrol Girls, but there are other bands now that I'm like Latimer, Reviver, all these sorts of bands where I'm like, fuck, like if I'd have just found this sooner, or, oh my God, like, you know, it's just this whole hugely empowering thing where I'm like, oh my God, like I found something that like speaks to me on a different level. And now I talk about that and I fill my life with that music and their lyrics and, you know, the way that they think about the world and how that resonates with me as well. And yeah, it's just hugely empowering. So yeah, that's like periods, music, films, hobbies, curating, creating, all this sort of stuff. I think the more that you talk about it and like seek out those spaces where people are also talking about it, which is why I think like things like zines and stuff are so magic, because if you look at zines and like people creating these little subcultures and celebrating subcultures within those zines and things like that, and then, you know, you can really tap into other groups of people that are liking that, and then that makes you feel so like valued and powerful when you have that confirmation from someone else that like, oh yeah, like I feel like this too, and you have a conversation that opens up loads of other stuff. But yeah, I was trying to like communicate that in the workshop, that I think I talk about it really specifically with my period sometimes, and actually there is so much other stuff. I think that once you have this light bulb moment of being like, oh my God, yeah, like I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to celebrate it, and yeah, it becomes this hugely empowering act. And if you can do that across different things, then you can feel so empowered with loads of stuff that you do in your life. But I think what I'm overlooking here is like, you have to have that first step. You have to have the first thing to be like, okay, I'm going to talk about this, or I'm going to celebrate this about myself. And I think that sometimes comes with having support from other people, or just having like one person in your life be a catalyst, or one thing happen to you that makes that a catalyst. And it's not an easy thing to do. And I've just spoke about it. Like, yeah, you just find this thing one day and then you can just talk about it and it's fine. But yeah, I think, you know, you will come across instances, or you will come across situations where it just feels natural to share stuff, or it becomes a little bit of a light bulb moment in your brain, or yeah. And I think this is why I think that social media sometimes at the moment is great, because you can tap into all this sort of stuff, and you can tap into online communities, and you can discuss things with people that might be outside of your social circle that also agree with you and also share those things, and being able to find other communities that, you know, make you feel like you have value. And then, you know, being able to be like, oh, there are people that get it, and being able to share that and talk about it. But yeah, it was like a bit of an epiphany I had, that sometimes it just takes one thing or like one situation to make you feel empowered, and that actually, if you wait for the perfect situation to happen, like it's never going to happen. No one is just going to curate the perfect environment where you feel like you have all the power and all the autonomy and everything going right in your life. There has to be some intervention from yourself. And, you know, if you get to a certain point and you're like, I just can't see where I'm going to find this, you know, it might be that you have to look at your day-to-day and your environment and the people you're surrounding yourself with. And sometimes it's like a really difficult conversation you need to have with yourself around, well, are these people serving me the best, or do I need to change my environment and change my surroundings and the people that I'm hanging out with? Especially if you take you are the sum of the 5 people around you thing, you know, seriously, is you know, if you are constantly with people that, you know, might make you feel like devalued, or might not give you a voice or give you a platform, or might not want to hear what you have to say, or, you know, you sat there thinking, I don't agree with any of this, or like, I hate all of this music, I hate all of the films they've just mentioned, I don't want to do any of the stuff that they've just said. You know, it's like a difficult conversation of being like, okay, I'm gonna maybe try and seek out different people or different groups, or try and do something else, or, you know, put some barriers or boundaries up. And then, then, you know, that might be the catalyst where you're like, oh, and now I found the thing, or the group, or the people. But yeah, you know, sometimes you can't wait. You just have to do it yourself. And yeah, it can be difficult, it can be challenging, but yeah, you know, you do not need permission from anyone else in your life to be empowered or to feel empowered. You know, you don't have to wait for someone to be like, okay, today's the day you can be empowered today. You know, it's the idea that alongside lots of stuff in your life, you don't need permission from anyone else to do the things that you need to do to make you a better person. So yeah, that was a big epiphany I had around empowerment. And, you know, you can't just keep waiting. It just won't happen unless you kind of sometimes push and seek out. And you might be someone that's really fortunate and have been surrounded by people your whole life, which is amazing. But also, like, don't underestimate how you play a role in making other people feel empowered. It is not necessarily it's not, what am I trying to say here? It is not a selfish pursuit to be empowered. Like, you have to also recognize that you have a role to play in other people's lives in like helping them feel empowered. They might articulate that to you, you might know what that is, but ultimately, like, you have to have awareness around you that, you know, some of the actions that you take can impact other people, and being able to provide spaces that make that, you know, the case for others. So, you know, like a big one, like just being able to like listen and turn up the volume on other people, which I talk about a lot. And sometimes I'm like really aware that I talk about these things and it sounds like I'm always like, you're doing this for you, and, you know, you need to turn up the volume, and you have loads of value. But there's also like an element of recognizing that, you know, if you are doing that for yourself, then you should also do it for people around you. And, you know, being able to acknowledge that, you know, the things that make you feel empowered might also make someone else feel empowered. So if you do that and help facilitate spaces and create spaces, and yeah, live out your values by doing stuff as well, and yeah, just helping facilitate that for everyone. But yeah, it's like, it's also the thing of being like, when I ask the question of like, so we start like, I think I spoke about it with the zine workshop, and in that, like, you know, being able to like define something or say what something means to you is really, really hard. And like creating definitions of things, you know, when you do start getting the ball rolling and people start coming up with ideas, it's amazing. But, you know, you have that bit at the start where you're like, okay, so what does empowerment mean to you? And everyone's a bit like, oh yeah, I don't really know what empowerment is. But then when you get the ball rolling, people just start to like fire stuff across, and it's amazing. And sometimes it's like super simple things, like the amount of girls in the workshop that were just like, being told I've done a good job makes me feel really empowered. Like, making, you know, just acknowledging that. And it doesn't have to be, they were explaining that it doesn't have to be like on huge tasks, but even like tiny little tasks, just being told that they've done a good job and just existing was like hugely empowering for them, and made them want to do a better job for others, but then also wanted them to just live like authentically. And they were like, oh, if I'm doing a good job, then I just got to keep doing this more and more and more. So don't underestimate the impact it has in just telling someone that they've done a good job that day, or that or thanking people, or, you know, acknowledging that people are doing stuff daily, and that, you know, their little actions are building up. So yeah, so that's kind of my roundup about empowerment and talking about being empowered. But I think the key things are that it does mean different things to different people, and different people need different catalysts and different ways of communicating like what, you know, how that empowerment works and how they can feel empowered. But I believe that everyone's got a catalyst, or everyone's got something that's going to be like the click or the trigger, like the light bulb moment of being like, oh my God, okay, this is how I can start to talk about, like, this is how I take the power back, and this is how I build all that power up in myself to be like the best version of me. And I think everyone's got it. Some people have nailed it from the age of 9. Some people are still working on it at the age of 55. But yeah, it's a learning process. It's definitely something that won't happen overnight. But yeah, I think it is, you know, and also like it's not going to be linear. Like some days you'll feel really empowered, some days you won't. But yeah, I don't know, I just think it's a really cool concept, the idea that, you know, if you think about empowerment as something that you can create and you can take the power back and you can generate it yourself, and that actually finding those little catalysts is like a big thing, then yeah, I think it's a really interesting and awesome concept. So I thought I would share it on today's podcast. So I've had a busy few days. I'm happy to say that like I have resumed some level of normality this week. And yeah, just trying to find that structure and routine again, because I love structure and routine. It makes me feel really comfortable, which I've done a whole podcast episode on why you should seek discomfort. But yeah, in the best way. I feel like I'm a really good version of myself when I have some structure, and yeah, I'm allowed to do the things that make me a better human. So I'm amped to say that I've been able to do all those things this week. I've even had a sea dip this week, which is brilliant. So yeah, after, you know, that I feel like it sounds like I'm complaining about my busy week, and that's not what it is at all. My busy week was really difficult, especially when I was like riding the high of the workshop, and then I had to do my adult job afterwards, and my adult job was really busy, and I was trying to catch up on work that I'd missed, and that all became super overwhelming. You know, I'm not complaining about it. It is really good. But yeah, it's just nice to kind of now have a week of being able to reflect and think about how I can ride this momentum forward and how I can take it forward. But yeah, I guess the first way is just articulating that I can do these workshops, and that these workshops should exist and these resources should exist all the time. So something I'm going to do over the next few weeks is like double down on that. And yeah. So yeah. Okay. I'm going to keep to this week's podcast episode relatively short. I think if I talk anymore, I'm just going to waffle on. But yeah, I just wanted to document how I felt, and yeah, some thoughts about empowerment. But anyway, what I've been listening to this week, I've been listening to a song called Voice in Your Head by Ship Present on repeat about 1 million times. It is, I don't know, I just love the lyrics. It's like the stuff I always talk about of being like the sum of the 5 people you hang around with, and the idea that some people are super supportive, some people can just wanna not see you thrive. And yeah, this song has got like both of those things in the lyrics, which yeah, there's just a lot of stuff going on in my head around those things, around like support systems and people in your life, and how people come in and out, and you know, how relationships change and dynamics change. But yeah, this song feels like a really timely song to come into my life. And yeah, so yeah, that's my song recommendation this week. I'm sure I'll be back with more waffle, more epiphanies, and more talking things out to myself very soon. But yeah, have a good one. Have an awesome week.